Today is Friday, January 21st, 2022, which means it's Whispers Friday. Hello, fiendlings, how the hell are ya? The cold weather is back here in Texas, and I'm perfectly okay with that. Why? Because I can breathe again. Now, if we could just get a relatively short-lived hard freeze, one that's not 8 degrees for 96 hours, the rest of the flora in this environment that makes me sick might actually die. Then I could count on breathing for a whole 2 months before spring. Oh well, it's a nice dream. Still, I had much more energy this week and cranked out a lot of chapters on Station 3. By the time you listen to this, I'll be at better than 65,000 words and barreling towards 70,000. What does that mean? It means the end of Station 3's first draft is in sight. Doubtful, but it's possible I'll finish it by the end of the month. That's my goal. Let's hope I hit it. Once the first draft is finished, it'll be time for my editing pass, followed by beta reader comments, followed by submission to Severed. As soon as those edits come back from Severed, I'll start recording the audiobook, and that means you start getting the podcast. Rough estimated publication date? March, April. Expected podcast start date? March. As always, dates are dependent upon health, unforeseen weather occurrences, collapse of civilization, the possibility Cthulhu might eat us all, and, of course, the exosolar threat. If you want to support the podcast and help me pay my bills and get access to exclusive content like The Black Oceania, beta read opportunities, early podcast episodes, and the like, visit shadowpublications.com and use any of the services listed there to become a member or just give me a tip to say thanks. Speaking of saying thanks, I must thank our wonderful sponsor, Corpse Coffee, who keeps the Fiend Master caffeinated for his writing and narration. Visit corpsecoffee.com and get the dead in your cup. Be safe, have a great week, and we'll talk again real soon. Here's episode 3 of Whispers. The only problem with walking and more walking was that it required energy. Energy meant metabolic reactions, and metabolic reactions required breathing. When Suit announced he was at 15% O2 reserves, Vaughn didn't slow down, curse, or hesitate. He just kept putting one foot in front of the other. His lights showed him the same kind of rock, but with colorful striations that seemed to run like tributaries from some great river, or maybe more like veins. He thought it was all the same, but it really wasn't. Sometimes the colorful lines thickened, or there were more of one color than another. The texture changed too, alternating between rough and smooth, concave to convex. Some 50 meters into the darkness, he noticed the tunnel gently curving to the left. After another few meters, the curve sharpened. He rounded the bend and came to a halt, his jaw falling open with a creak. Shreds of material, something like skin or maybe cloth, stuck out from the colorful veins. He crept closer and reached a glove to one of the larger pieces. Before his fingers touched it, his HUD lit up with a radiation warning. He pulled back slowly, and the alert disappeared. What the hell, Suit?
Radioactive material encountered. Deadly levels expected within 1 centimeter of material.
Confused, he replayed the last 15 seconds of cam footage. The alert hadn't gone off until he was nearly touching the stupid thing. If it were that radioactive, Suit should have warned him when he was within a meter of it. What the hell kind of radiation was that? He zoomed in using the cam and made sure Suit's lights pointed directly at the material. A slow tide of acid turned over in his stomach. It wasn't cloth. He knew that now. It was skin, or flesh, something biological, not processed and formed. Natural. Something else had been in here and had ended up being absorbed by this, well, whatever the fuck it was he was stuck inside. The wall holding the piece of alien skin quivered before melting and providing him more room. The shred of foreign material disappeared as if it had never been there. Vaughn waited for a moment, his breath slow and relaxed. Would the wall move again? Close in on him and eat him like it had one of the previous explorers? If it had wanted to kill you, you'd already be dead. The thought bounced around his brain before he finally grasped it. Yes, it could have killed him when he first put his back against the cliff face. It could have eaten him while he was unconscious, Why hadn't it? The tunnel had solidified again. The colorful veins running through the rock abnormally bright beneath the glare of his suit lights. Vaughn took another look at his HUD. 13% O2 and falling. "The void hates a coward," Vaughn muttered, and followed the tunnel. After walking a dozen meters, the ache in his head had become a little more than just uncomfortable now. Suit had given him everything it had, and he was on his own. Good thing he only had to stand the pain a little while longer. By the time his head felt as though it were being slammed by a hammer, he'd be dead. And if not, well, he wouldn't suffer long anyway. How's that for a headache cure? Just remove your helmet, take a deep breath of nothing, and go out while staring at the walls like a moron. Sounds perfect, doesn't it? "Like signing up for this shit in the first place," he mumbled. Another few steps and he realized he wasn't going to die before the headache hit him like a freighter. It was here. Vaughn grunted in pain, once again wishing he could slam his fists against his temples. Anything to take the edge off the blade slashing through his brain. Through a groan, he thought he heard something sibilant. Despite the pain, he opened his eyes and stared at his HUD, expecting to see an alert that Suit had been perforated. The sound was louder now, a long note that slowly fragmented, gaps of random silence interrupting the tone. "What the fuck, Suit? Where is that coming from?"
Context unknown. Please restate.
"Where is that sound coming from?" Suit paused for a moment while the sound increased in volume. Another bright bolt of pain flashed across his mind, making him want to scream. The hissing had dropped into low tones, dancing discordantly over and through one another.
You are in a vacuum. There is no exterior audio source.
"Bullshit," Vaughn said. The pain in his head had grown monstrous, the backs of his eyeballs feeling as though they were being slashed by thousands of hooks. He stumbled into the wall, barely conscious of how it flexed to keep him from hurting himself. The myriad of bass tones that had collided into an ear-bending assault of music flattened out as though a third of the untalented bassists had been spaced. The chorus was still out of tune, but it was finding itself. If he didn't feel like screaming, he might have been able to appreciate it. For a moment that felt like an eternity, the inferno of pain swirling through his skull flared even higher and knocked him to his knees. Warm blood trickled from his nostrils, and he was either crying or blood was squeezing from his eyelids. He didn't want to know why his ears felt wet. The sound in his skull departed suddenly, as did the unbearable pain. Vaughn panted with exhaustion, his fists pressed against the tunnel floor.
Oxygen reserves at 10%.
"Shut up," Vaughn managed through gritted teeth. The sensation of being burned alive had departed, leaving him feeling empty and cool in its wake. His nose no longer ran, his eyes felt better, and his ears? Well, who the fuck knew how damaged they were, but he could still hear Suit just fine. That sound didn't come from outside Suit, he thought. It wasn't transmitted over the comms, it was inside your own damned head. Yes, that's right, inside my... He stood with a groan of effort, surprised at how difficult it was in the low gravity, and swayed slightly before finding his balance. His vision crossed and he shut his eyes tightly. "When I open you," he said to his traitorous eyes, "you better show me one fucking image." He opened them slowly and blinked 3 times to clear his blurry vision. The tunnel was brighter now and not from his suit lights. The veins of color running through the rock or flesh or whatever the fuck it was had brightened. The blues looked electric, the reds as bright as arterial spray, and the green vein pulsed, oscillating from a light shade to the same color as the glow he'd seen outside. Brighter, though. Much brighter. Vaughn looked at his O2 reserves. That little episode with the sound inside his skull had eaten up another 2% of what was left. Another fit, or seizure, or whatever you wanted to call it, and he'd be down to almost nothing. Not as though he had much left anyway. He took a tentative step, waiting for a bombshell to go off in his skull, but nothing happened. There was only the slight give of the tunnel's surface beneath his foot. He took another step, didn't fall over, and pronounced himself fit and ready to asphyxiate. With that cheery thought in mind, he continued walking, his eyes constantly straying to the colorful threads running through the walls. And the ceiling. And the floor, too. They were all pulsing now and getting brighter. Vaughn chewed his lip for a moment before shutting off his suit lights. He came to a halt immediately. His lights had masked just how beautiful it all was. Not only that, but the nuance, the artistry, had been lost. He'd only been able to see the brightest veins rather than the myriad of intersecting lines and shapes that were muted, but even more beautiful. Ahead, without the lights on, he saw the glow, the same eldritch glow he'd seen before this monster had swallowed him. Vaughn continued walking, a gentle smile on his face. Between the colorful tunnel's surface, walls, ceiling, and the glow he walked toward, he was in too much awe to worry that he'd be dead in less than 20 minutes. As he continued walking, his muscles and joints aching more and more, the glow brightened. Or maybe it was only because he was closer to the source now. The air ahead of him seemed thicker somehow, the glow glittering like light through mist. Another dozen steps, and he realized he hadn't been crazy when he thought it looked like mist. It was a mist of a sort. Glowing green droplets appeared on his visor and on Suit's arms. "That stuff could be eating through Suit," a panicked voice said in his mind. "Yeah, but I'm dead anyway. What does it matter?" With each step, the mist thickened. He heard a sound and came to a stop. Sound? No. Whisper. He cocked his head as though it would help him make out the sound again, although he knew the sound had been in his mind and not from the vacuum surrounding him. The whispers were there, just beneath the ever-present tone of tinnitus. He took another tentative step and focused. The whisper, or was it whispers, was still there and a little louder. After a deep breath and a mental battle to keep the shivers from crawling up and down his spine, he continued into the mist.